is Sandor Voldefari from the Center of Arts, Sciences and Humanities of the University of Debrecen. Please go on.
Thanks so much, dear colleagues. I'm sharing my presentation, and my kind request, please tell me, can you hear me? And can you see my shared shared presentation?
Yep, everything good. We can hear and we can see.
Okay, so yes, in my computer I have to. Okay, so the topic is the iconographic arguments about the date of creation of the mosaic in the south vestibule of the Hagia Sophia. Aha, now it's moving. So I'm dealing with this mosaic already in a series of my lectures because this is my favorite topic, and is this report I want to overview the arguments about the dating of this mosaic. Thus, here I continue the considerations on various problems concerning the mosaic in the south vestibule. At the previous symposium in Skopje in 24th, I proved this mosaic represent the patronage of the state power by the Theotokos in the victories of Emperor Basil II over Bulgarians in the Balkans and other enemies in the eastern provinces too. Dear colleagues, this is a very important moment. Other enemies in the eastern provinces too, because this can prove, this can be a background that Emperor Basil II compared himself to the Justinian. And it will be a significant moment in the argumentation of the creation of this mosaic. The starting point is the fact that there are depicted Emperor Constantine the Great offering the city of Constantinople to the Mother of God to the right, yes, here, and the Emperor Justinian I, the Legislator, does the Lawgiver, as offering the Hagia Sophia, which was built by him. So we know, everybody knows here that the Hagia Sophia was built by Emperor Justinian, to the Mother of God to the left. Thus, this mosaic has a very secular message. This is not a religious mosaic, but a mosaic thus denoting to the imperial power in a religious language. I have spoken about in the previous report last year in Skopje and in the medieval Congress in Leeds too. Thus, the location of this mosaic. This mosaic is located in a special place. Thus, this is the Patriarchal Gate, which was used by the emperor. Thus, the narthex is over there, and the crowd entered to the Hagia Sophia across the narthex, but the emperor and the patriarch entered the Hagia Sophia via the south vestibule. Therefore, this mosaic was visible not for the crowd, not for the people, but only for the emperor and the narrow surroundings of the emperor. And it is also a significant moment. I will deal with this. So I emphasize the structure and iconographic message of this mosaic instead of the material, the style of inscription and shaping of figures, because the later arguments were already dealt with very accurately. For instance, in the works of Thomas Whittemore, who restores this mosaic and first described this mosaic in the 13th year. Thus, this is the Gate of Patriarch in the south vestibule, and Whittemore papers, 3 papers of Whittemore, because Thomas Whittemore, the monographer of the mosaic in the southern vestibule, of the Hagia Sophia then considered significant miniatures in the Menologion of Basil II and regarding the depictions of the Mary in the mosaic of the Hagia Sophia in comparison with the miniatures emphasizes that the representation of the Virgin and the Child with its elongated shape but a fuller, heavier pattern echoes the characteristics of the manuscript made by the younger Basil when he was under the rule of John Tzimisces. Thus, therefore, Whittemore was very correct when he left the question open, and he republished his studies in an updated version 2 years later with a broadened text and additional remarks. And he stated that, quotation from Whittemore, no criterion of probability is violated if we assign the making of the panel to the reign of Basil II, and we suggest provisionally the years between 986 and 994 when the use of the building as a church was suspended as the date of the mosaic into space and time. End of quotation. Thus, in this time between 986 and 994, the imperial rule was usurped by John Tzimisces, and this time there happened a very significant victory over the Eastern Slavs, over the Sviatoslav of Kiev, but another victory over Bulgarians took place much later when Basil II was not a child under usurper John Tzimisces, but already a powerful emperor. So, if we accept Whitemore's argument, the mosaic was built due to the victory over Eastern Slavs by usurper John Tzimisces. And you can see the mosaic was covered by Turkish dust painting because Islam doesn't permit depiction of people, and Whittemore restored this mosaic. And another argument appears when considering the parallel between the Hagia Sophia and its parallel temples in other buildings. The framing of Virgin head by white edge of the veil seems reasonably close to the depiction of a bust of the Virgin Orans in the narthex in the mosaic lunette of the Church of the Dormition of Nicaea. That church is often compared with the Hagia Sophia. I go further because this argument by Mango, Cyril Mango, very famous Byzantinologist. The mosaic in Nicaea was made in 1065 and 67, according to Mango. Thus, it is an argument for the time of the style of depicting Mary with the white frame of her veil in the late 11th century, when this element of the style of depiction of Mary appears in various mosaics and pictures too. You can see an enlarged part of this mosaic with this veil. Also, the Dormition Church in Nicaea is important in many aspects. The comparison with the Hagia Sophia doesn't prove so much unless a terminus ante quem. So, the mosaic in the Hagia Sophia should be created before the other mosaic in Dormition Church in Nicaea. If such a white frame of the veil of the Virgin Mary is depicted in Nicaea, it must be made after that of Hagia Sophia. Therefore, the mosaic in the South Vestibule in Constantinople must have been built before 1060. But it seems to be an artificial and weak argument, in my opinion, for it relies on the maintenance of the Hagia Sophia as a pattern because of its great prestige. So it is a logical and artificial thus argument, but we can consider it okay, because Cyril Mango has great thus respect in the Byzantinology. On the other hand, it is a fact that white frames of the veil appeared in the 11th century. Another point, such veil in Ravenna appeared too. It will be discussed in my full paper because we have not so much time. And then about Morey's concept about a very early date based on inscriptions and miniatures. Charles Rufus Morey in 44 overlooked the problem of dating and previous arguments by Whittemore. His conclusions led to an amazing new dating. First, he overlooks the argument of inscriptions over 3 figures, which are the strongest arguments of Whittemore. Albeit paleography is not such a sure argument in Byzantine culture as in the Latin word says Morey, not me, but Morey. And I accept too this argument, but I cannot accept Morey's dating. He recognizes the dating argument by the monograms of Mήτηρ Θέου, and points out that these monograms are late arrivals in Byzantine inscription, and these appear first on the coin of Emperor Leo VI, the Wise. Okay, this is the Mήτηρ Θέου. But the reign of Leo VI might have been the terminus postquem, okay. At the same time, it appears to be dated, the Mosaic, to the end of the 19th century. Thus, Morey can be considered as an author about the argument terminus postquem, but not the Mosaic shouldn't be dated to the time of Leo VI, of course. This is the paper of Morey, and let's go on because we have not so much time. So, however, in this case, if we accept the date during the reign of Basil I instead of Basil II, then the mosaic in the Theos vestibule must have been created on other occasion, thus not for the victory over Bulgarians by Basil II, but for some other great battle. In our opinion, historical circumstances must be considered as far as the argument of the art, because the style of miniatures and style of mosaics are different questions, and the style of a mosaic can follow some earlier pattern, while the style of a miniature in a manuscript depends more on the hand of the scribe illuminator. Nevertheless, the style of a mosaic may follow some pattern in the manuscript too, hence the later date in the time of the reign of the second Basil is absolutely acceptable, even in the case of the mosaic and their inscriptions follow some pattern of earlier times. As for the iconography, it seems more likely that Basil II wished to commemorate his victories over Bulgarians, and I have already said in the introduction, over Eastern enemies in Eastern provinces, okay, rather than John Tzimisces, who usurped power during Basil's childhood and defeated the Eastern Slavs. So that was the only one victory, but Basil II had a greater victory over Bulgarians and even much more victories in Eastern provinces. Therefore, he compared himself to Justinian. Okay, I have already said it. In our view, Basil could and wished to commemorate his entire conquering, not only a single victory, including his victories in East too, and he compared himself with Justinian first. The Theotokos in the center, this is my last point, I'm finishing within 2 minutes. The Theotokos in the center was a copy of the Theotokos in the great apse of the Hagia Sophia. Everybody of us can know how it is look like. The great apse in the Hagia Sophia, there was the main Theotokos, and this mosaic was the copy of the other Theotokos. Therefore, it followed a pattern. Therefore, the arguments based on the depiction of Mother of God, thus the veil-argumentation by Mango, and the inscriptions comparing with miniatures by Morey, and considerations from main inscriptions of the Mήτηρ Θέου by Whittemore, and so on, should be evaluated with considering that the main Theotokos in the Great Apse was created much earlier and gave the pattern of this mosaic in the South Vestibule. This the main Theotokos as covered by veil nowadays due to President Erdogan's Islam system. This material argument should be completed by functional arguments too, as is my opinion. Functional arguments. Why was this mosaic created? In which position and with what purposes? We consider for an argument that the South Vestibule was a special entrance, earlier for the Patriarch than for the emperors exclusively. Therefore, this mosaic served as a visual representation of the imperial power and glory of the empire. The entrance under this mosaic is named by patriarchal door, as I have already said, and notice the reference Niewerner and Teterjatnikov, the South Vestibule of Hagia Sophia at Istanbul, the ornamental mosaics as the private door of the Patriarchate. That Teterjatnikov called this vestibule as a private door for the Patriarchate. This highlights my opinion that this is a visual representation of the imperial power. Thus, conclusions. The mosaic in the South Vestibule has explicit secular content too, with the two greatest emperors of the Byzantine Empire, namely the founder of Constantinople, Constantine the Great, and the greatest conqueror and codifier of the law of the empire, Justinian the Legislator. Thus, those whose reign gave the largest territory and greatest power to the empire. Such a great conqueror after Justinian was only one, thus Emperor Basil II. However, his territory was far less than that of Justinian's empire. Still, after the latter, he was relatively the greatest and strongest, the Bulgar slayer Emperor Basil II, under whose direction this mosaic might have been created. Basil II not only broke the power of Tsar Samuel of the Bulgars, but also recovered Syria, Antioch, and Mesopotamia from Islam, as I have already referred to the victories in the eastern provinces too. Thus, a date after the victory of 1017 seems the most probable for the creation of this mosaic, because the usurper Tzimisces was not in such a position that he could compare himself to Justinian I, but Emperor Basil II was in a position that he could compare himself to Justinian I, who is depicted in the mosaic. However, the date is a subject of debate. Thus, my conclusion is only my opinion, and I gave an overview of different arguments, and heated discussions took place between the supporters of the Basil epoche and the Tzimisces epoche. So those who want to continue this discussion are welcome in the Congress in Vienna, because to my sorrow, I am now via Zoom, but see you in Vienna in person in next year and the Byzantine Congress. So thank you so much. I am stopping my screen sharing, and if you have any questions, I am more than happy to answer. So thank you so much. I'm finished. Anybody there?
Thank you, colleagues. Now we have a 15 minutes discussion. So if you have any questions, feel free.
If I understand that your question concerns the links to the you said battle, I would use not battle but victory, because it is a common opinion in the Byzantinology, and thus argued in the monograph by Bisera Pencheva. Bisera Pencheva's monograph, The Icons and Power, She is a professor of the Stanford and published this monograph 2 times, that this mosaic was created as a thanksgiving over a great victory. And argumentation is detailed in the monograph Pencheva, so we have no time now to deal with it, and that's why I refer to this monograph because I accepted the argumentation of her. Of course, debates, science is open for debates. And I am a very, very great fan for Pencheva. So in my every writings, I follow Pencheva. And that is my answer, that if we accept the concept of Bisera Pencheva, then this mosaic was created due to 2 victories. The first theory is over the Eastern Slavs by Uzurbe John Tzimisces, and the second theory is over Bulgarians by Basil II. And as I argued in my report, that in my opinion, it was created for a much more conquest, not a single victory. That's why I hardly can accept the battle, but victories. And Basil II had great victories in eastern provinces and Bulgarians too, but I have already said in my paper. So I propose you to consult Pencheva and then discuss, because she called great discussions too, but that's another story in the Byzantinology. Thanks so much.
Thanks for clarifying.